So good evening or good afternoon, everybody, depending upon where you're joining us from. My name is John Segota. I am the Executive Director for the National Association for Gifted Children, and we appreciate you joining us this evening for our webinar on serving the whole gifted child. We're very excited. We have a great lineup of panelists who will be leading our webinar this evening, including Dina Brulles, who is with the Paradise Valley Unified School District in Arizona, Tracy Inman, who's with the Center for Gifted Studies at Western Kentucky University, Tom Hébert, who's with the University of South Carolina, and Theresa Newsom, who is with the Public School District 11, is that right? In Colorado Springs, Colorado. Advance and turn it over to our panelists, and I believe Dina will be starting us off.
So we are here today to talk about serving the whole gifted child. And what does that mean and why is it even important? During this NAGC webinar, we will share and discuss the findings and recommendations from NAGC's Whole Gifted Child Task Force led by our NAGC board member, Dr. Angela Housand. And she did an amazing job running this task force. And we created a report that emerged from that contains all the findings and recommendations from that. And so we're going to be reviewing some of those, sharing some of those, and letting you consider how that impacts your role in education. So several of the former task members are joining us for this presentation. And we'll be addressing some of the guiding questions next. So George Betts was our past president, and his presidential initiative was to create this task force for the whole gifted child. And his goal, in his words, was, our goal was to discover, synthesize, disseminate the knowledge and research of the whole gifted child. We evaluate his or her needs, development, and the importance of providing alternatives for his or her ongoing growth in the school, home, and community. The Whole Gifted Child Task Force really stemmed from George's legacy, the autonomous learner model for developing potential. And autonomous learners perceive living and learning as main components for continual development of potential in several realms: cognitive, emotional, social, and physical domains. Motivation, George believes, comes from within. Skills are internalized. Passions are the pathways for the journeys. Next, we're going to take a look at what those areas look like for you individually. These are a few of the guiding questions that we're going to focus on during this webinar. What are the comprehensive needs of the whole gifted child? What must parents and educators and whole communities do to support that whole gifted child? And what are the possible outcomes for the gifted child who receives comprehensive support? As we move through this presentation, continue to ask yourself, why is this even important? And especially so during these current times of social and societal unrest. So let's ask ourselves, who are our gifted children? Who are they really? Remove the cultural lens, remove the academic achievement, remove the language that they may speak, and then whom do we see? We see the whole gifted child, how the child thinks, learns, and understands. While the whole gifted child's development encompasses the social, emotional, cognitive, and physical realms, these elements can differ significantly with gifted children in underrepresented populations especially, but in all populations. It's really critical to remember that these considerations can also contribute to the underrepresentation of certain groups when we don't look at the whole child, when we don't know what to look for, I should say. So next, what we're going to do is talk about a few of the main task force takeaways. And first of all, focusing strictly on academic achievement diverts attention from considering the all-encompassing learning needs of the whole gifted child. We have to look beyond the academics. And franchising the whole gifted child requires that we look beyond the test score and look within the child. This pertains to high achievers as well as underachievers. While test scores may show potential for learning and measure what one has already learned, we need a deeper, more personal understanding of the child in order to develop effective approaches for serving the students, especially those of underrepresented populations. Next takeaway, when gifted children feel understood, accepted, and appreciated for who they are, not solely for what they can do at any given time, they're more likely to take academic risks, accept academic challenges, and feel confident with their efforts. Isn't that what we want with all of our learners? I believe that every educator can describe a child with whom they have witnessed this phenomena. This statement represents a mindset that needs to be instilled on all new children, and all new teachers who are entering our field, not just educators of gifted children. However, gifted children do have a heightened sense of sensitivity, emotions toward feelings of acceptance. They are acutely aware when they don't feel accepted by their peers and their teachers. Next takeaway, considering all dimensions of the whole gifted child embraces, enfranchises, and empowers gifted learners. And building self-esteem and resilience within our learners opens endless opportunities. Adults understanding that unrealistic expectations can hinder growth is critical to the well-being of the child. A few cautions about children, we're speaking of this, child's concerns about some of these children really worry about living up to others' expectations. They have a difficult time alleviating anxiety when they are trying to work to the expectations of others. Sometimes moderating that can result in paralyzing impacts such as perfectionism and the lack of being able to strengthen the social skills when they don't feel accepted and understood. We need to embrace and empower these children so that they can feel confident in all areas of their lives. So some of the Whole Gifted Child Task Force recommendations, these are included in the report. Oh, by the way, the report will be available for you, and we strongly encourage you to go ahead and read that full report, because this is just a snapshot, and just some of the takeaways and recommendations, findings from that. But when you're looking at reading that through that, think about that these recommendations should really inform not only how we work with the students in the schools, but how we inform our identification practices, our programming, our services, what this looks like during the school day. So we are hoping that these recommendations, you will take these and consider when you are identifying and creating some of your services. So first recommendations, to recognize that giftedness exists as part of the human experience. It's seen in various contexts. Our children come to us from all different backgrounds, which is wonderful because they have so much to share and for us to learn from. And we have to be open to that, to understanding that. We need to recognize that the compatibility of developing healthy coping strategies, well-being, and a strong sense of self, alongside the talent areas, are our responsibility to help embrace and enfranchise these children. And of course, that the gifted children have an identity beyond their talent areas. The task force recommendations will be expanded upon throughout this presentation. Recommendations and continue. And I'd just like to point out that really this emerged from the findings, the importance of providing universal screening with valid and reliable measures. Why is this important? Because when we are looking at gifted children through our lens, through our cultural lens, We don't always see outside of our past experiences, our backgrounds, our understandings. But when we are able to provide universal testing, we are able to recognize strengths in kids that we might not have been able to see before because that cultural lens has been removed. We need to remove that, we need to develop a holistic profile and not just focus on the academics. Recommendations include providing services to include non-cognitive factors that affect the development of the gifted child. From that poll that you took, did you recognize that the emotional aspects and the social aspects were equal, if not more, than the intellectual aspects? Because we know for children to feel safe and confident, we need to look at who they are internally, not what they can produce on a test or on paper. And to do this, we need to incorporate personalized learning as well, because this way we get to know their interests and support those interests and passions and ideas. And like George said, that is the pathway to be able to develop that whole child, by focusing on developing their strengths, whatever those strengths might be. Next, we're moving into what this looks like in our schools.
Hi, and welcome. Henry Brooke Adams said, "Teachers affect eternity. They can never tell where their influence stops." We already know that giftedness crosses all cultures, races, and socioeconomic groups. When we enter into our classrooms, who is there? That's our big question. And who's not there? It is so important that we include and find and make sure that everyone, every group is represented. And that includes all gender identities. We are living in a nation that is changing before our eyes each and every day. And we know that not only children who may be low SES, students from poverty, students who are twice exceptional, students with multi-exceptionalities, but we also know that gender identities are so important to our young people. And these students also are part of our gifted population and may be underrepresented also. So as we look at our classrooms, we look at our students, see me. That's what they're saying to us. Do you really, really see me as a whole person? I am a multi-dimensional person. I do have my cognitive abilities, but I'm also talented in so many other areas. So see me beyond the academics. Know my name, know how to say my name. Sometimes, unfortunately, people like to give our students pet nicknames. And that sometimes is wanted and makes a connection, but be aware that it doesn't always connect with everyone. Knowing someone's name, knowing how to pronounce their name is an important part of helping them build their social emotional wellness and their well-being. We also want to make sure we connect with our students. And John, you can go ahead and move the slides. Sorry. Okay. We want to make sure we're connecting with our students no matter what, however they identify themselves. Okay? That connection is important because it also goes beyond just the ethnicity and race. We're also looking at like the gender, but also our exceptionalities. So again, see me, okay? Don't judge me, but see me and the things that I bring into the environment for learning. John? See me beyond my talent, okay? Or excuse me, see me with my talents, not just my cognitive development. When I'm looking at students in my classroom, I'm looking at everything. What are their capabilities beyond the classroom? What else do they bring into that classroom? They bring their talents. They bring their athletic prowess. They bring their artistry, their creativity. They bring their social emotional being. whether it's high or it's low, they bring everything into the classroom. So see my talent as well as me as a person. Understand me. Look at me beyond today and see my tomorrow. We live in a complex world, and our students know that the world is becoming more complicated because they're watching TV. They're seeing what's happening in our society. They're seeing what's happening in our world. They are in so many different spaces, at home, at their churches, in their on the athletic field, in their community. They're seeing themselves in so many different places. How do they want to understand who they are beyond the classroom, beyond the school setting? It is so important that we know where our children come from. Some of them come from different countries. They've entered the United States and they become citizens, but they still have a past. They still have experiences that are valuable to them, whether they were born in America or not. They are gifted. They have a context that they bring in their experiences. Our goal is to understand and to not only know them personally, but know where they came from, be able to identify the country, the region, the location. That helps them understand that we understand who they are and provides background so that we can teach and support them emotionally and beyond. Students want us to look at them through psychosocial competencies. How do you help them develop their well-being? We do that by building their self-efficacy. We help them build resilience when problems occur. We know our gifted students sometimes have anxieties. They have difficulty managing their emotions. That's our job as educators. And parents, even though I'm talking mainly to teachers, you are their first teacher. You've always been their first teacher, and recently you've been their home teacher. So you have a connection to their learning because you've been in a situation because of COVID-19 that has brought you into becoming their main teacher as we have done remote learning. So building their self-esteem, helping them build empathy, helping them learn to walk in someone else's shoes. That's a challenge for us. But when we understand empathy while we're building our own self-efficacy, it helps us learn to manage our well-being, have an understanding of others, and build positive relationships. We also want to make sure that we listen and we listen and we listen. Sometimes as a parent and as a teacher, that's very challenging. It can be it's difficult. I'm not saying any of this is going to be easy, but we know the main thing is that people want to be valued. They want to be cherished. They want you to support. We may not always agree with what our young people are doing, but when they are heard, it is easier for us to redirect and help them understand what needs to be done. And it teaches them personal responsibility as they develop empathy when we nurture and support them along their journey. Because again, it's not always about their cognitive development, it's about their social emotional development. And they can't get to where they want to go without us being there to listen. We also want to show them themselves in all spaces. When people can see themselves in different spaces, that they're not alone, that also helps develop their well-being. It helps nurture them and support them. Everyone wants to see that I'm not the only one. I am valued and I'm appreciated. And so as we look at the classroom and we look at the environment, do people see themselves in all situations? Our gifted students are representative of all situations and all spaces. And to value them is important to let them know that we see you and we understand you and you're not alone. We also want to challenge our students, challenging them as individual learners. They are a collective body in the classroom. We teach and we provide depth and complexity on a continuum spectrum, but we also need to see them as individuals. We want to develop their talent and have them be the best they can be. But they all have their best that they can be is not going to be the same for every person. It's an individual situation when we ask students to do their best. We look for ways to support them. We know that sometimes our students underachieve for so many different reasons that we won't go into, but knowing that sometimes they have achieved as far as they can go at that moment, it doesn't really mean they're underachieving. It's just they've gone as far as they can go. And that's why, again, nurturing and supporting and listening to their needs is vital for their growth and their development. We also want to provide that rigor, though. Okay? The rigor is where they're at. And not every child, even gifted, is at the same level. So we should be looking at challenging our students by making sure that we're listening. There is wait time. Gifted students need us to pause. They need us to wait. We can't always be in a hurry and even though the time is clicking, the clock is ticking, we have to sometimes just give them wait time. We also need to make sure that they understand that they have a voice, teaching them to self-advocate for their own learning, directed learning, curriculum that's challenging, rigorous, but also has depth of knowledge, that everything is not at the lower level. It's where students can analyze, they can discuss diverse perspectives, they can use critical thinking, they can use inquiry thinking. There's a lot of ways for our students to challenge themselves and move forward in their learning. We also want to make sure that as we challenge our students, we're looking to be inclusive and equitable in the resources. That it's important that they know that we are there for them, providing choice, and that we all have a say in how students can be helped and grow in their learning. We want to build on their strengths. Students who may be from diverse backgrounds, whether they're 2E, twice exceptional, we want to build on their strengths. We want to listen to what they're saying as far as their creative thinking. Sometimes people think, well, that's an idea that it's a little different. But that's the beauty of our gifted children. They have ideas that really are out of the box. That's building on their strengths because they're thinking in a different way. And that's the mother of invention. So we want them to be innovative. We want them to have depth and complexity in their lives. We also want to make sure we nurture and challenge them. We want to provide flexible grouping, cooperative grouping. We also want to have collaborative thinking activities. We want them to be able to work individually, but also work together as a collaborative group. In closing on my part, what I want to make sure that I want to end with something that Aristotle said, and that was educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Let's make sure we focus on the whole child. Thank you.
I have the honor to highlight the thinking of Dr. George Betts. It's appropriate that we take time today to look at the 6 essential beliefs that he felt needed to be instilled within the whole gifted child. The first one, unconditional positive regard. John, if you would, thank you. The ability to accept people as they are and not as you would want them to be. The celebration of individual differences and learning to appreciate where people are coming from, regardless of socioeconomic background, religious background, cultural background, celebration of diversity, acceptance of people for who they are, what they're all about, and not necessarily what you would expect them or want them to be. Unconditional positive regard. Very critical. The second component, or the second belief that he wanted to instill, or wanted educators to instill in gifted young people, would be a solid identity, or a solid sense of self, a belief in self, or an understanding of self, knowing who I am, knowing what I'm all about, knowing and understanding my strengths and weaknesses, and feeling good about that. And with that understanding, know where I want to go in life and have the confidence to become the person that I want to be. The third belief that Dr. Betts highlighted there we go. He saw definitely a critical interaction between the emotional, the social, the cognitive, and the physical development being very, very critical. He was definitely a strong believer in the well-roundedness of the whole gifted child. And he maintained that if one of those domains was missing, there could very well be a deficit in the learner's progress in terms of lifelong learning. So our role, of course, is to nurture each and every one of those components within bright young people today. The fourth major belief, and this was something that George felt very, very strongly about, and that is passion learning. The being able to pursue, a young person having the opportunity to pursue what he referred to as passion learning, which he saw was definitely the highest level of learning, whereby a young person became totally immersed in an intellectual pursuit. Time stands still. They may even forget to eat. They're so totally engaged in what it is that they're excited about and working hard to pursue. There's a generation of new ideas and, of course, new products. It is that young person who has the passion and the ability to remain focused on something that they're excited about for a very long period of time. They remain incredibly focused, committed to that task, and are determined to produce something that they believe is critical, that they believe is oftentimes addressing a problem that they have come upon, and sharing that passionate learning and sharing what they have learned and what they have produced with others who may also be concerned about the problem that they want to address or the topic that they want to delve into. Passion learning. And in doing that, Dr. Betts maintained that the whole gifted child, or our bright young people today, are going to need educators who are going to nurture and build communication, consultation, and collaborative skills within children. The ability to work well in groups, to work well with others is going to be certainly important in contemporary society in solving and addressing the challenges that we face as a people. And last but not least, Dr. Betts saw the ability of our children to seek a better world, that the future is in their hands, that they have the opportunity to visualize a better world, and they will need our support to develop the solutions to the problems that they see in the world today. And I was reminded of this just a couple weeks ago, and when I encountered a wonderful article in the Washington Post about a 7th grader named Quinn Callender. Quinn is a little guy growing up in Canada, He's in British Columbia. And he was reading about doctors and nurses in hospitals who were required to wear tight-fitting medical masks while working on COVID-19 patients. And they were left with severe marks and bruises on their faces. He wanted to make a difference for them. Well, fortunately, Quinn had received a 3D printer for his birthday the previous year. And he discovered that he could create, with his 3D printer, he could create ear guards, tiny little pieces of plastic, little plastic devices that would help to relieve pressure that was experienced by the healthcare workers in the hospitals. He found a design on the internet, and he went to work, and he programmed his printer to produce these very simple little plastic straps. These gadgets enabled the doctors and the nurses to connect them to their masks and to adjust their masks to keep them from rubbing their faces uncomfortably. He's recently produced over 500 of these, and with a post on his mother's Facebook page, he's sent them out to healthcare workers across the globe. That's the type of child that Dr. Betts is talking about when he's saying developing solutions for our world problems today. And I would argue that Quinn Callender in Canada is going to join his high school peers in the fall, and he is going to begin an anti-racist campaign within the student body to help young people throughout the world deal with the pain that we are all experiencing from the horrific issues that we are currently dealing and the death of George Floyd. So it is with children, the whole gifted child that George felt so passionately about, that are going to make a difference and help to bring about a better world. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Tracy Inman, who is now going to highlight some critical resources for all of us to consider.
Thank you, Tom. We've spent this time talking about the results of the Whole Gifted Child report. Now we'd like to share with you some of those resources. The right-hand side of this slide, you're going to see the Whole Gifted Child Task Force report that you can download. And yes, we will send out the information to you. And on the left-hand side, there's an article that George Betts wrote that is also on the NAGC website. So we have quite a few resources there. To continue with those, we also have something called Teaching for High Potential. And this is available to all members. And I have to tell you, it is a wonderful, practical resource for teachers. I just randomly chose 3 topics. And look, we have everything from program evaluation to dealing with gender, to types of services for gifted children. So Teaching for High Potential does not just focus on the cognitive aspect of kids. It focuses on the whole child, which is what we're talking about and which is what's so important. We have other resources as well. On there, you will see a Bill of Rights for teachers of gifted students. And I wish we had time to talk about each of these. I think we could have an entire webinar just focusing on these. But let's look at just a few of them. Look at the third one down. Attend comprehensive training to aid in identifying and serving gifted children from all backgrounds. Yes, you have a right to that as an educator, to get the training that you need. Go down a little bit. Teachers of gifted students have a right to take into account their students' diverse social, emotional, cultural, and economic backgrounds. And this is what we've been talking about in so many ways, that these children come to us very different from each other, but they are whole children. So we have to look at each facet of their personality. And to me, one of the most important ones is the last one, that we have the right to say this student needs something different. And that's where we're talking about equity, right, and justice. So I hope that you'll have time to go back and look through that and maybe share that with other educators you know, as well as administrators, school psychs, lots of different folks. Other resources that we have on the NAGC website are position statements. I've selected just one that deals with the cognitive aspect of the child. How do we address that? And this happens to be on differentiation of curriculum and instruction. But if you go there, you will see multiple position statements dealing with varied subjects. And we're talking about the whole child, whether it's social, emotional, cognitive, etc. On the next slide, you will see some resources that are not NAGC website resources, but they deal with the whole gifted child. And there are 3 different books that you can see that focus on all of those different aspects. Also on the website, we have resources for parents and for families. I do not want that to throw you off if you're an educator or an administrator or someone else who works with gifted children, because these tip sheets that we have, it's called Timely Information for Parents. It's a fabulous resource. We have dozens of them now, and each one of them is a front and back 2-page, quick, easy to read resource that has main ideas, frequently asked questions. It also deals with basic resources that can really help you. So if you look at these ones that I just randomly chose, some perfectionism, we're looking at social emotional growth, nurturing gifted African American children. That is so incredibly important, especially in light of what's going on now. And just basically talking with your child about giftedness. To get ready for the Whole Gifted Child seminar, we have produced a brand new tip sheet that is just ready today. You can download it for free. This highlights what we've been talking about today. And you can see most of the main concepts, you can see resources, and I think it will be a very good, something that you can use as you share with folks with whom you work and also folks that you serve. On the next slide, this is available for members. Parenting for High Potential. This is a magazine that is filled with very important research-based practical articles that are pretty short, that encompass the research, but does it in a way that it's very easy to understand. So these are wonderful resources to share with not just experts in the field of gifted education, but with all people, including parents who might not know all of the educational jargon and that sort of thing. Parenting for High Potential is a wonderful resource. We have pulled together the best of Parenting for High Potential, of PHP, and we've put it into a book. And this is available on the NAGC's store website, and it is Success Strategies for Parenting Gifted Kids. What we did is we took the best of PHP from 2010 to the present. We updated resources, we updated the material, and we have it in a very nice collection where you might have a chapter just on twice exceptional students, a chapter that deals with, for example, how to work best with your child's school. What are the best ways to do that? So I really recommend this. I think it's a fast, easy way you can skip exactly to the area that you need that's most important to you. Another resource that I wanted to point out, and by the way, I'm just kind of handpicking out of so many that are available, but we do have resources that are available in both English and Spanish. Helping Your Gifted Child Succeed is one of those resources. And I would be negligent if I didn't let you know that as we talked about tip sheets, right now we have some of the leaders in gifted education, specifically leaders of color, who are working on a tip sheet on how to handle racism and how to discuss racism with your children. And please look for that coming out hopefully within the next few days. We try very hard to meet needs here at the National Association for Gifted Children, and we don't just focus on those cognitive needs, folks. If you think about that poll at the beginning, how many other needs there are and how we have to synthesize those and address all of them. It's so important. I can do this, John, or you can do it if you want to. I'll do it.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Sure. Well, since we have your attention, we do also want to highlight, in addition to all the tremendous resources that Tracy just outlined, we do have several events that we have throughout the year. Next month in July, we will be hosting our Leadership and Advocacy Conference online. It's usually held in March, but because of the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, it'll be done virtually this year. So you'll see a link on the website that you can participate. It will be held over July 13th to 15th, and we'll have a tremendous lineup of speakers and experts talking about areas of national policies that relates to gifted education, how to work as an advocate, and how to engage with decision makers. While we won't be able to actually physically go up to Capitol Hill to have meetings with members of Congress, you will be able to learn during the online conference how to do that, how to speak with decision makers at all levels, and you can do that virtually from home or back in your individual districts. Of course, one of the highlights of our year is the annual convention, which is scheduled for November this year at the Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando and Walt Disney World. So we're hopeful that events will change. We'll be able to convene in person in November at Disney World. But just rest assured, we are monitoring events as they unfold, and we will definitely have an opportunity to convene in some way in November. So we're looking forward to that. And here's just a quick snapshot of different ways you can engage with the National Association for Gifted Children. If you're not already a member, we do hope you'll join us. But of course, there's a URL of their website, nagc.org. We, of course, are across different social media channels. We have the, if you look at the lower left-hand screen of the screen, you'll see a link to the resources that have been developed to respond to the situation with the pandemic. We have a special resource collection. It includes many of the resources that Tracy has mentioned, and some specially developed ones. You just go to NAGC at home following that URL, and you will find that list of information and links to different resources. And we're continuing to update it. So if you've already checked it out, we encourage you to come back and see what's there. And then we also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to, which has a gathering of information and headlines about what's happening in the field across this country and outside the United States as well, around in gifted in education throughout the country. So you can subscribe to that. That is free. You do not need to be a member to subscribe to that. And as we've been walking through these, I've been looking at the tremendous conversation that's happening in the chat box. I really appreciate everyone's feedback here. There's a lot of really good suggestions about possible resources we could explore. And of course, as we see the need to have some of our resources, especially for parents in languages other than English. That is something we do take very seriously as a priority, and we are exploring further options for that. So thank you very much for those excellent suggestions. And I'll turn it back to our speakers to help close us out.
Well, I'm sure that I'm not alone when I'm saying I actually learned from my colleagues as well. That you were to get information. But sharing out, one of the most important things that we can do as gifted educators who focus in on gifted students. Every child deserves a champion. Think about how the number of students, the children who are sitting in our classrooms who are void of having that champion, who miss somebody, who don't have somebody that can recognize their strengths, their feelings, their emotions, their interests, their passions for learning. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Quote from Rita Pearson. I want you to, if one thing you can take away is from this today, is to share this understanding with others in your school, other parents, other advocates, other mental health professionals. In school, too many times we overlook the whole gifted child because we get bogged down by the academics in getting through material that we need to cover as educators. If only we embrace the children for who they are, get to know them, build on what they bring to the table, then we can develop their potential. Then we can open up opportunities that previously may have gone unrecognized and unsupported. Every child deserves a champion. Thank you so much for being part of this project and helping others to recognize this as well. Now, I think John is going to lead us with a few questions that some of you have posed.
Yeah, so we do have some time left for questions. So if you do have a question, if you want to post it in the Q&A box, or if you also want to post it in the chat, I have both of those open. We could look at that. There was one question, I think it was already been answered during the discussion. It was posted earlier, but it was in relation to the question is, how do we promote resilience and not distress in damaging ways? My son struggled with writing things down, and with homework, I wasn't sure of the balance between having him accomplish it and stressing him, having him accomplish it and stressing him out too much. So I think Tracy, Theresa, did you already address that during your part of the presentation, or did you want to address that now?
I'll address it now. When students are having that meltdown, they're feeling like, I cannot make it, I can't do this, I am just done. The frustration is so high. A couple of things to think about. Helping them stop what they're doing and remove the task, having them go for a walk or get some fresh air, do something that separates them from that task so that they can calm down and just step away from it and have some relief. When they have calmed down, then I would suggest that you ask some questions. How can I help you? What's making this difficult? Is it and I think the question was, it could have been the writing. There may have been too much writing. So helping them brainstorm some ways to solve that situation. Can they type the information? Can they draw? Can they record it? Does it have to be written on a sheet of paper? Can they illustrate it? Can they build it? Can they create a visual and then be able to articulate, and you might even be the one writing it down for them. But again, there's getting them to answer the question of, how can we get you through this after they have calmed down and you've de-escalated? And again, it may take a little bit longer than you want. It might have to be set aside for another day. And that's kind of hard because it's like, I want to get it done and I want to have closure. But again, the whole child is what we're focusing on. And when their emotions are high and their frustration and anxiety is high, it is the de-escalation, step away, breathe, calm down, and then get back to it when they're receptive in taking those next steps. That's how we build resiliency, and encouraging them and giving them positive steps, words of, you're going to be okay. I've struggled too, but this is how I got through it. So we model and we role model, role play. Those are just some suggestions to think about.
Great, thank you. Those are really excellent suggestions. There's another question that came in as a parent whose child's in private school and looking for resources around proper testing or screening. And this is really would be a question for any of the panelists. Are you aware of any recommendations about resources parents may pursue around screening for their children?
So here's Dina here. One of the things that, because I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, where we have a lot of private schools and charter schools, and I am the coordinator in a large public school. However, when parents call me and ask just that question, I'm in a private or charter, I need to get my child identified or tested. So at least in Arizona, but you should check out in your own states. In my district, we will invite any child in for gifted testing to be included in our school district testing as long as they reside in our school district. And we do that because, like you say, a lot of charters and privates are unable to test and don't have those resources. But you know how fluid it is with school, where children change schools. So if I can help get children identified that are in charters or privates, once they see some of the, that at least they know that's an option to explore further what other resources and opportunities exist for that child's education. So I want to reach out and help everybody in our community. So as long as they reside in our district, we test them. Check out your local school district. They may do the same. I know that many in Arizona do that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dina. So another questions popped up about, is there any resources available on the importance of space and place? Do any of our panelists can speak to that?
I'm not sure what it really means, importance of space and place.
So maybe the person asked the question if you wanted to expand on that question or post it in the chat.
While she expands, I will follow up in the next question about recommendations on assessment tools to remove cultural bias.
Please go ahead.
In my school district, I use the Naegeli nonverbal ability test because it does not have any language. Of course, it's only in the nonverbal area, but there's new tests being developed right now, actually through Jack Naegeli. And I think if you continue to keep an eye out online, there's new tests that are available that are coming out next year through MHS Mental Health Systems. And I'm involved with that project, but so is Dr. Naegeli. And it's a tool that's going to identify verbal and quantitative ability without the use of any language, which is super exciting because the pilot and the beta testing has shown zero difference between white, Black, and Hispanics, zero difference between ELL and non-ELL students, and zero difference between students with the educational level of the students that are tested. So that won't be out for another year, but keep an eye out on it because there are new tools coming out that are focusing just on that ability that we have to expand beyond our traditional measures and enfranchise more diverse populations.
John,
yes.
Just to piggyback, well, to talk about the space and place, just really quick. I don't know if there are, I cannot give you specific resources, but we do know our children, there's so many places they're involved with. And so when I said spaces and places, is that it's not just the schoolhouse, but even within the schoolhouse, we look at how students respond in the cafeteria, when they're out on the athletic field, when they're in the hallways during their passing periods, in the library. I mean, these in the art class or the music class compared to a academic class. So, and then we also look at them in the community, Boy Scouts, Girl Scout setting, the YMCA, just hanging out at the park, skateboarding. In hockey fields. So again, I don't have the exact references for that, but we do see our students in so many different places and spaces that we're watching and they're saying, understand me in all of those places and beyond those places. How do I act when I go to a house of worship? Some of our students may be out protesting. How do we see them today out there on the streets marching? Those are spaces and places that they take their giftedness with them. They didn't leave it at home. It doesn't stay just in the classroom. And so being aware to understand, to see them as whole people, as whole gifted children is important because we don't want to limit them and put them in a box of just cognitive domains. That's what I did.
I'd like to add to that, John, one thing that Theresa just said. As a gifted coordinator, when I'm getting teachers and parents nominated, of course I blanket test, I do universal testing, especially at our Title I schools, but I always include the art, music, PE, band, all the other special area teachers because they see strengths in kids that the classroom teacher might not, because some of those academic achievements have not been developed or strengthened, but some of the other aspects of the child are blatantly obvious to some of our special area teachers. And when we test those children with suitable tests, a lot of times they identify, and then the teacher starts to see things that they didn't recognize before because we have opened that door. And to also address Wayne's question about developing resources for teachers in the regular classroom, let's face it, the vast majority of our gifted students are in regular classrooms. So all of the resources that we create at NAGC and in the field, they should be shared with all classroom teachers, all gen ed teachers. And for example, in my district, all of our workshops, we make available to all teachers in the district. And the resources that are out there, the books with strategies and instructional approaches and how to group students and how to pre-test and accelerate and compact curriculum, That's all good for all children. And if we make some of those strategies available and help teachers understand who the gifted child is and some of those strategies, we end up identifying more students and developing the talent and potential in more students than we would if we were just focusing on those already identified gifted students. Good question, Wayne.
Really, really good questions. And unfortunately, I look at my watch here and we're actually a little bit past 7. So I'm afraid we don't have time to get to the rest of the questions that have popped up, and we'll need to wrap up the webinar for today. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. We had a great attendance, a really great discussion happening in the chat box here. And of course, a just tremendous webinar presentation by our panelists. So I especially like to thank Dina, Tracy, Theresa, and Tom for all their great work and sharing their time and their expertise with all of us. And as I mentioned before, this webinar has been recorded. We will be sharing with everybody the webinar recording and the slides. This will be freely available on our website as well as our YouTube channel. So if you have friends and colleagues who could benefit from this information, once the recording is made available, feel free to share that with them. And we're very excited to offer some additional webinars in the future. Right now, plans are under development for looking at webinars around the revised standards that NAGC has published last year, as well as other important topics for the field. So please stay tuned for future announcements of when those webinars will be presented. And with that, we will wrap it up for this evening. So thank you again, everybody, for your time, for your participation, for the great discussion, and again to our panelists for all their expertise. And I hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you and take care.